The morning sun over Cape Town was breathtaking, painting the sky in shades of violet and gold. Inside the diamond villa, Zoya sat motionless as three stylists worked on her. Her wedding dress, a masterpiece of silk and hand-stitched pearls, felt like a suit of armor. She was the billionaire heiress of the Vanguard tech empire, a woman who had everything, except, she believed, the love of a good man. "You look like a goddess, ma'am," the head stylist whispered. Zoya smiled, but her heart was racing. Today, she was merging her life with Julian, a man who seemed like a prince from a fairy tale. She looked at the photo of them on her vanity. Finally, she thought, someone loves me for me, not just for my billions. She didn't realize that the man in the photo was actually her executioner. Zoya wanted to do something special before the ceremony. She had purchased a rare, $1 million vintage watch, the piece of history to match the future she thought they were building. "I just sneak over to his suite," she told her reflection. "One last kiss before we become one." She picked up the small velvet box and slipped out of her room. The mansion was a maze of flowers and expensive decorations. Guests were arriving in helicopters, and the smell of expensive lilies was everywhere. Zoya moved like a shadow through the halls, her heavy train clicking softly behind her. She felt like the luckiest woman in the world, unaware that she was walking straight into a nightmare. As Zoya approached the heavy mahogany doors of Julian's suite, she stopped. She heard the sound of a champagne cork popping, followed by a laugh that made her skin crawl. It was Julian's voice, but the tone was different, sharper, colder, and filled with a cruel arrogance she had never had before. "Stop worrying, Bella," Julian said. Zoya's hand froze an inch from the doorknob. Bella. Why was a maid of honor in Julian's room 20 minutes before the wedding? She leaned in, her heart hammering against her ribs so loudly she feared they would hear it. The curiosity that led her to stay would be the very thing that saved her life, even as it destroyed her heart. "The dose is perfect," Julian's voice continued. "It's a slow-acting neurotoxin. It mimics a heart attack brought on by stress. By the time the priest says 'I do,' Zoya will be gasping for her last breath." Zoya felt the air leave her lungs. She gripped the wall to keep from falling. Julian continued, "Once the death certificate is signed, the grieving widower inherits the entire Vanguard portfolio. We'll be billionaires by sunset, Bella. No more playing the charming fiancé. No more pretending to like her boring tech talk." The cruelty in his voice was like a knife twisting in Zoya's chest. The man she loved was discussing her death like a business transaction. "And what about me?" Bella's voice rang out, playful and wicked. "I've spent months being her best friend, listening to her cry about her insecurities. I deserve a reward." Zoya heard the sound of a deep kiss. "You'll have everything, my queen," Julian whispered. "You'll wear her diamonds and sleep in her bed. She's just a stepping stone to our empire." Zoya's blood turned to ice. Bella, the girl she had treated like a sister, the woman she had paid the debts of and shared every secret with, was the one holding the poison. The velvet box in Zoya's hand felt like a lead weight. She realized that every smile, every hug, and every "I love you" from these two had been a calculated lie. Zoya staggered back, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She had to get away. She couldn't let them see her. If they knew she had heard, they might kill her right there. She turned and fled, her white gown flowing behind her like a ghost escaping a haunted house. The polished floors felt slippery under her heels. She passed a mirror and saw a stranger, a woman in a beautiful dress with eyes full of pure terror. She didn't know where to go. The mansion was full of people, but she was entirely alone. Her mind raced. Who could she trust? Her father? Her stepmother? Or was the rot even deeper in her family tree? Zoya reached the grand staircase, nearly tripping over her long silk train. Her chest felt tight, not just from the shock, but from the faint traces of the toxin she had likely already ingested in her morning tea. "Stay awake, Zoya," she hissed to herself. "Don't die yet. Not like this." She saw her father, Silas, standing at the bottom of the stairs, talking to business partners. He looked so powerful and composed. She rushed toward him, her vision starting to flicker like a dying light bulb. "Dad," she cried out, her voice cracking. "Dad, help me." The guests turned, their faces a blur of confusion as the happy bride came crashing down toward them in a panic. As Zoya reached the bottom step, the world tilted. The toxins were working, and the emotional trauma had accelerated their effect. She fell into Silas's arms, her gown sprawling across the floor like a broken lily. They are killing me," she whispered, her lips already turning a faint shade of blue. "Zoya. What are you saying?" "Who?" Silas shouted, his face pale with shock. But Zoya couldn't answer. Her eyes rolled back, and her body went limp. The ballroom erupted into chaos. Security guards rushed in, and the music stopped abruptly, replaced by the screams of panicked guests. The wedding of the century had turned into a crime scene in the blink of an eye. Julian burst through the crowd, his face a mask of perfect horror. "Zoya. My love," he screamed, pushing people aside to get to her. He dropped to his knees, clutching her cold hand and sobbing as if his soul was being torn out. It was a masterpiece of acting. Anyone watching would have seen a man desperate to save his bride. Behind him, Bella stood, wiping fake tears from her eyes. She looked at Julian, and for a split second, their eyes met. A silent message passed between them: "It's happening. She's dying." They were surrounded by hundreds of people, yet they were the only ones celebrating the tragedy unfolding on the marble floor. The paramedics arrived, their boots stomping against the floor. They lifted Zoya onto a stretcher, her white veil trailing on the ground, getting stepped on by the crowd. "She has a pulse, but it's faint," a medic shouted. Julian jumped into the ambulance, refusing to leave her side. As the door slammed shut and the sirens began to wail, Julian leaned over Zoya's unconscious body. He pretended to be praying, but in reality, he was checking her neck for a pulse, hoping it would stop before they reached the hospital. The race was on, not to save Zoya's life, but for Julian to ensure she never woke up to tell the truth. Inside the speeding ambulance, the air was clinical and cold. Julian sat in the corner, his face buried in his hands to mimic a man in prayer. But behind his palms, his eyes were sharp and alert. As the paramedic turned to check the monitor, Julian's thumb danced across his phone screen. He sent a message to a hidden group chat: "The bird has fallen. Prepare the documents for the transfer. By tomorrow, I want the power of attorney papers ready for signature." He looked down at Zoya. Her face was as pale as the silk of her dress. He felt no pity. To him, she was just a vault of gold that had finally been unlocked. He adjusted his tie, preparing his grieving husband's face for the cameras waiting at the hospital gates. The ambulance screeched to a halt at the emergency entrance of the Cape Town private clinic. Reporters and paparazzi, tipped off by Julian's associates, swarmed the vehicle. Julian jumped out, shouting for the doctors, his voice cracking with artificial desperation. "Save her. Please, she's my whole life." As Zoya was wheeled into the trauma unit, the hallways filled with the wealthy elite of South Africa. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and the harsh tones of scandal. Everyone was asking the same thing: was it her heart? Was she poisoned? Or did the pressure of the empire finally break the tech queen? Julian sat in the waiting room, center stage, enjoying every second of the attention while secretly counting the minutes until her heart stopped. Beatrice, Zoya's stepmother, arrived 2 hours later. She didn't go to Silas first, she went straight to Julian. They exchanged a look that lasted a second too long. Beatrice leaned in, ostensibly to comfort him, but her whisper was sharp. "Is it done? Did she take the full dose?" Julian nodded almost imperceptibly. Beatrice let out a loud, dramatic sob for the benefit of the crowd, clutching a silk handkerchief to her eyes. Zoya, from the edge of her fading consciousness in the ICU, heard that sob. Even through the fog of the drugs, she recognized the falseness in Beatrice's voice. She realized the betrayal didn't stop with Julian and Bella. The woman who had raised her for 10 years was also part of the hunt. Dr. Mbeki, the family's private physician, entered the ICU. He had known Zoya since she was a child. He looked at the monitors and then at Zoya's pupils. Something was wrong. The symptoms looked like a heart attack, but the chemical markers suggested something else, something synthetic. Suddenly, Zoya's hand twitched. Her eyes opened just a sliver. She saw Dr. Becky and gripped his wrist with surprising strength. "Doctor," she rasped, her voice a dry rattle. "They tried to kill me. Julian. Bella. Beatrice. All of them. You have to help me. I need to die. Tell them I'm dead." Dr. Becky froze. He realized he was the only thing standing between Zoya and a second, more successful murder attempt. Dr. Becky acted quickly. He knew that if he reported the poisoning now, Julian would find a way to finish her off before the police arrived. "I'm going to give you a sedative, Zoya," he whispered. "It will slow your heart to the point of being undetectable. You will be cold. You will be still. But you will hear everything. Do you trust me?" Zoya looked into his eyes and nodded. He administered a rare compound used in deep tissue surgeries that slowed the metabolism to a crawl. As the drug entered her veins, Zoya felt a terrifying chill spread through her body. Her breathing stopped. The heart monitor flatlined with a long, haunting beep. The sound of the flatline echoed through the ICU. Dr. Becky stepped out into the waiting room, his face a mask of professional sorrow. The room went silent. Silas stood up, his face trembling. Julian stood up, his breath held. "I am so sorry," Dr. Becky said, his voice heavy. "We did everything we could, but Zoya is gone." The Vanguard heiress passed away at 4:12 a.m. The room erupted. Silas collapsed into a chair. Beatrice wailed. "But Julian." Julian stood perfectly still for 3 seconds before letting out a roar of grief that was so loud it felt practiced. The billionaire was dead. The vultures were officially invited to the feast. Zoya's body was moved to a private morgue within the mansion, as per her prearranged funeral wishes that Julian had forged. She lay on a cold marble slab, covered in a white sheet. She could hear the wind howling against the windows of the estate. She heard the heavy door creak open. Footsteps approached, the sharp, confident click of Italian leather shoes. It was Julian. He was alone. He pulled the sheet back from her face. "You were so smart, Zoya," he whispered, his voice dripping with venom. "A genius in the boardroom, but a fool in the bedroom. Thank you for the billions. I spent them well with Bella." He laughed softly and kissed her cold forehead, a kiss that felt like a snake's crawl on her skin. The next morning, the lawyer, Mr. Koza, arrived for the reading of the preliminary will. The family was shocked to learn that Zoya had added a mourning clause just a month prior, another move by Dr. Becky and Zoya to buy time. "The inheritance will only be released," Mr. Koza announced, after a 10-day period of solitary reflection. "Each of you must spend 1 hour alone with her in the morgue every day. If anyone fails to show, they are disqualified from the will." The room grumbled. They wanted the money now. But the greed was stronger than the fear. They agreed. On the second day, Bella arrived for her hour. She didn't even look at Zoya's face. She spent the entire 60 minutes on her phone, looking at luxury yachts and emerald earrings. "I think I'll buy that villa in the south of France first," she muttered to herself. She walked over to Zoya's jewelry box, which had been placed in the room, and slipped a ruby ring onto her finger. "You won't be needing this where you're going, Zoya. It looks better on a woman who actually knows how to have fun." Zoya, trapped in her frozen body, recorded every word in the vault of her memory. On the third day, Marcus and Sophie, Zoya's step-siblings, came in together. They didn't even pretend to be sad. "Finally, the golden child is out of the way," Marcus said, leaning against the casket. "Dad always loved her more because she made the money. Now we can finally fire all those boring engineers and just sell the assets." "I'm selling her art collection first," Sophie added, admiring her nails. "Most of it is trash anyway." They laughed and joked about how they would spend their hard-earned inheritance. Zoya realized that in this entire house, she had been nothing but a source of income. The pain of their words was sharper than the cold of the morgue. On the 6th day, Silas entered the room. The powerful CEO of Vanguard Tech looked older, his shoulders slumped. He sat in the chair beside Zoya's casket, but he didn't reach for her hand. Instead, he stared at the wall. "I built this empire for you, Zoya," he whispered, his voice trembling. "But you were becoming too much like your mother. You were starting to ask questions about the offshore accounts. You were getting too close to the truth about how I started this company." He let out a dry, hollow laugh. "Julian thinks he's the one who killed you. He doesn't know I saw him tampering with your tea weeks ago. I just didn't stop him. It was easier this way." Zoya's mind screamed. Her own father had watched her be poisoned and did nothing to protect his legacy. The betrayal was now absolute. On the 7th day, the heavy doors opened to a woman dressed in humble, warm clothing. It was Alena, Zoya's biological mother. She had been told for 20 years that Zoya hated her, and Zoya had been told Alena ran away with a lover. Alena fell to the floor, her cries raw and agonizing. "My baby. My beautiful Zoya," she wailed, clutching the edge of the casket. "I never stopped writing to you. I never stopped trying to see you. Silas told me he would destroy your life if I ever came back. I stayed away to keep you safe, but now you're gone anyway." She kissed Zoya's cold cheek, her hot tears splashing onto Zoya's skin. For the first time, Zoya felt a warmth that didn't come from a drug. She felt loved. On the 8th day, Theo, the driver, came in. He was the only person who didn't look at the clock. He sat in silence for the entire hour, occasionally wiping his eyes. "I have the recording, Zoya," he whispered so softly that only a corpse could hear. "I caught Julian and Bella talking in the car months ago. I was too afraid to give it to you because I thought you loved him too much. I thought it would kill you. I was wrong. Silence killed you." He stood up and touched the casket gently. "I make sure they pay, even if it cost me my life." Zoya realized she had an ally in the shadows. On the 9th night, the morgue was quiet. Dr. Becky slipped into the room. It was time to bring Zoya back. The suspension drug was wearing off, and her body needed to be revived slowly to avoid permanent damage. "It's time, Zoya," he whispered, injecting the reversal agent. Slowly, painfully, the fire returned to her veins. Her lungs expanded, drawing in a sharp, cold breath. She sat up, her eyes burning with a new, dark light. "The 10 days are up," she said, her voice sounding like ice cracking. "Tomorrow, I attend my own funeral." The 10th day arrived. The mansion was draped in black silk. Julian had organized a celebration of life that was more like a victory party. He wore a designer suit, sipping vintage wine while greeting guests. Bella was draped in Zoya's favorite pearls, acting as the lady of the house. The lawyer, Mr. Koza, stood at the podium in the grand ballroom. Before the final distribution of the Vanguard estate, he announced, "We must view the digital testament left by Zoya in the event of her untimely passing." The giant 4K screens in the ballroom flickered to life. But it wasn't a sweet montage of Zoya's life. It was a high-definition recording from the hidden cameras Dr. Becky had installed in the morgue. The room went deathly silent as Julian was seen spitting on Zoya's corpse. Then came Bella, stealing the ruby ring. Then Marcus and Sophie, laughing about selling her art. And finally, Silas, admitting he watched her be poisoned. The guest gasped. Julian's glass of wine shattered on the floor. Bella tried to run, but Theo's security, blocked the doors. "Wait," a voice boomed from the back of the hall. "The video isn't finished." The crowd parted like the Red Sea. Walking down the center aisle was Zoya. She wasn't wearing white, she was dressed in a sharp, blood-red suit. Her hair was pulled back, her eyes fixed on Julian. The guests screamed, some fainted. Julian backed away, tripping over a chair. You're dead. I saw you die." "I've been dead for 10 days, Julian," Zoya said, her voice amplified by the speakers. "But I've never seen more clearly in my life." The police, led by Theo, swarmed the room. Handcuffs were snapped onto Julian and Bella's wrists. They began screaming at each other, Julian blaming Bella for the weak poison and Bella shrieking about Julian's infidelity. Zoya turned to Silas. And you, father? You didn't pull the trigger, but you loaded the gun. I've already signed over my shares to a blind trust. You're fired from your own company. The police have the recording of your confession. Take him away. Silas was led out in silence, his head finally bowed in shame. Zoya stood in the center of the room as her mother, Elena, rushed to her. They held each other, 2 decades of lies finally dissolving in their tears. Zoya looked over her mother's shoulder at Theo. He gave her a small, respectful nod. He didn't ask for money or a reward, he was just happy she was alive. The Vanguard Tech Empire will continue, Zoya announced to the remaining guests. But from today, it will be a company built on truth, not blood. Weeks later, Zoya sat on the cliffs of Cape Town, watching the waves. The villa was sold, the friends were in prison, and the toxic family was gone. She had a new life, her mother by her side, and a loyal friend in Theo. The moral of the story: betrayal may thrive in the dark, but the truth is a light that can never be fully extinguished. Sometimes you have to lose your life to find out who is truly willing to help you live it. Thank you for watching this incredible journey. Please subscribe, like, and share this story with your friends and family. Your support helps us bring more shocking stories to life. Drop a comment below. What would you do if you could be a ghost for a day?